We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Welcome everybody back. This is Steve Cunningham with Sons of Fidelium, coming at you with another interview on the 23rd of January. This is January 2020 with Father Anthony Mary, who's in the future in New Zealand. He's a day ahead of me. So anyway, Father, good to see you again.
Good to be back again, Steve. Thanks for inviting me in. That's great. Good to be here.
Like I said, anything to help you guys out. So anyway, just wanted to go with a little background of the Redemptorists and basically the founder of who is St. Alphonsus.
Okay, St. Alphonsus, I suppose any order loves their founder, loves their patron saint. So we have a great love for St. Alphonsus. And I'm not trying to say he's greater than any of the others, greater than all the other saints, but he is a great saint. So he's from Naples, born in Naples in 1696. So it's just the end of the 17th century and beginning of the 18th, when there was a lot of, well, there's very difficult to make foundations of religious orders in spite of the Catholic countries that he was living in. So he was baptized on the 27th of September with, I haven't got all his names, but about 5 baptism names: Alphonsus, Mary, Anthony, Michael, Cosmas, Damien. And the priest baptizing him said that he would live to the age of 90 and become a bishop. So we already see the hand of God upon St. Alphonsus, predicted to be a great saint, living to great age. It's said of him in his canonization, which is kind of going into the future, but that he never committed a single deliberate venial sin, which is extraordinary. It's amazing that saints can even not commit a deliberate, well, commit a mortal sin. But St. Alphonsus, through his confessor, who was allowed to reveal it, said he never committed a single deliberate venial sin. Okay, so he's a great saint in that respect. He made vows, and much later on in his religious life, never to waste a moment of time. It was a new vow, a vow to always do the most perfect thing. He had vows to make the Sign of the Cross every day, to pray the 15 decades of the Rosary every day. The only saint in the church to make that vow. I made a vow to pray the Dolors of Our Lady every day, to preach on her every Saturday, to fast on bread and water in her honor every Saturday. This is just from the top of my head. So a great saint. He became, he was the eldest in his family, had a younger brother, Hercules. So he should have received the inheritance from his father, but he became a priest and had great difficulties to leave the family home because he was so extraordinary. At the age of 16, he was a doctor of both civil and canon law. Okay, so just imagine a 16-year-old, just a young lad who's there in the bar. He receives his coat and his hat, and it's all too big for him. But he becomes one of the greatest lawyers of the time there, and defends cases and never loses a single case until his conversion, which is when he did lose a case. But through recent study, it's shown that when he made his whole case, and like it was just absolutely flawless, and he was going to win, and then what the opponent said something, I forget, something about the case, and St. Alphonsus, almost like he had missed a point. But he hadn't. The reality was, says, look, no matter what you do, you're going to lose because this case is rigged. Basically, was what basically said. And so St. Alphonsus said, well, law courts, I know you now. World, I know you. You'll see me no more. And so he leaves, and he becomes a priest, and then gets chosen by our Lord to found the Redemptorists, and that's where his vocation with the religious life begins. And it's through the visions of Sister Maria Celeste Cross de Rosa, I think I may have said this already, but he, he verifies that her visions are correct, and he's chosen to begin the Redemptorists. And the idea is to go out to the most abandoned souls. And so he's just totally on fire for the salvation of souls. And that fire still lasts today, and it's seen in his books. Okay, so he wrote 111 different titles. Some of them were just pamphlets, like 10, 20 pages, other big books. I've got a few that are, have been available in the past through Tan Books and publishers. This one, Dignities of Priest, is quite well worn, missing bits of the cover. The Glories of Mary, one of his most extraordinary books, on Our Blessed Lady, books on the Passion, and then they're quite well known generally in the traditional Catholic world and even broader to that. So these works of St. Alphonsus, and the thing about his writing is that it's easy to read, it's enjoyable to read, it is to the point, it's clear, it's deep as well, so I must admit, like this, I've read his works in the past and really appreciate them, and then as you grow in the spiritual life, you read them again, you say, okay, I know it, that's what he was meaning there, and that's what he meant there, and you can see this depth that he's able to put in these books, which you don't maybe appreciate the first time you read them, but you get to see it. So this ability to communicate his love for God and to communicate his desire of the salvation of souls, that we want to love God and save our souls. So that's the relevance of St. Alphonsus today. So his books, they were taken up by this priest called Father Ronald Tangen, and he had a project to produce hundreds of thousands. And I think it was in the when I was at the seminary. I don't know if that's the first time he did it, but I was at the seminary in the 1980s. Just check when this was reprinted. Oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, so he printed, like, it says in this one volume, 175,000 books.
Oh, wow.
In one go, and then he did a reprint of 150,000 and did reprint. And so St. Alphonsus books are actually, all around the English-speaking world generally, and they can still be got. We've put them up onto our a website called at the Alphonsianum. You can put a link to that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going sticking to the point, but just speaking about St. Alphonsus, I just do love him.
Yeah. I did hear that he was called a Mary worshiper because of that one book.
Yeah, well, the thing is, in spite of being a lot of books on Our Blessed Lady, there was this chap at the time was talking about, people that can have too much devotion to Our Lady and they're kind of worshiping and all that type of thing. But he wrote the Glories of Mary in 1750. So he was already, it's actually his first book is the Glories of Mary. So he started writing when he's in his 50s, which is extraordinary because at that stage he was, already had founded the congregation, was a busy man preaching the missions, all that type of thing. And he begins his writing, and then he writes 111 titles on just about every possible subject. But the Glories of Mary, I mean, I could maybe do a whole talk on that, because I did do one about 20 years ago in France, in fact, at a Marian Congress. And it was in French in France. But, the Glories of Mary is just taking the Salve Regina, which is the prayer of the church, and just explaining it, to the faithful. And it's a beautiful book, really, really nourished so many souls and given such a love for St. Alphonsus. And they say it's the most well-known book on Our Lady in the Catholic Church.
I believe it. Yeah. I remember me coming out of sports, and I was always liking the Hall of Famers. Dad always told us to read, going into basketball, I was reading Larry Bird. I still got the book. It's the drive. I wanted to learn what these guys did. So when going into church, I heard about this guy, Alphonsus, from one of his sermons, reading it, and he quotes the Hall of Famers, the saints. That was amazing to me.
So that's his ability. Some people have called him I forget what the word. They just say that he couldn't write anything himself. He just had a copy of the saints. But it's not that at all. He had such an ability to hide himself. His humility was so great that he didn't want to just say something as if he is saying it, even though he's adopted the church now and one of the greatest saints. So in a certain sense, he had this incredible ability to hide behind what all these different other holy people and saints were saying. And so you see in every one of his books, the amount of quotes that are there of saints saying things. So he knew so much, had read so much, that he was able to write his book almost by just quoting this saint, that writer, this thing, and just produce these incredible works. It was his humility rather than what some people said, his inability to say anything himself. I mean, of course he did say things himself. He wrote the moral theology and things like that. But yeah, there's an extraordinary number of saints that are quoted from, fathers, priests, theologians, all that type of thing. And then in the Glories of Mary, it's wonderful. He gives these stories, and they're not stories because they're just real facts that happened, but absolutely extraordinary. And a priest, a group of theologians, went. So as far as I'm aware, St. Alphonsus wrote everything from memory. Okay, so he never had any books around. He just wrote everything. All his quotes are from memory, and they checked every single quote in the Glories of Mary. There's thousands, and they couldn't find. I think there's one that was maybe just slightly off, but otherwise every single quote was correct and to the point. And so it's amazing. Just it's amazing that he was able to do all of this. And so he had a great mind, great memory.
Oh yes, yeah. Maybe next month we'll do something on Glories of Mary. That's piqued my interest.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I've read it a couple of times. Yes, by far it's amazing. But so Alphonsus traveled the diocese, didn't he, to preach?
Right. So he began. So I think I said this last time. The aim of the congregation is to preach to the most abandoned, and so those were the poor people living in the countryside, in the hills, who were neglected by these priests, who were basically priests not because they necessarily loved the salvation of souls or that type of thing, but were just looking, it was like a job for them. They did earn a kind of salary, and there were thousands of priests in Naples itself, but hardly any in the countryside. So they weren't really going out. So our Lord wanted this congregation to begin, which would go out to the most abandoned, preach to them in a simple manner that faith, and lead them to the love of God. So yes, he would go around the diocese and preach a mission which was a time of extraordinary grace, where they would preach the eternal truth, just get people onto this reality. I've got a soul, I need to save my soul, and there is a hell, there is a heaven, there is death, there is judgment. And so just getting those things clearly into people's minds, that's the fundamental, the basis of our whole faith, is that's what we're aiming at. If I save my soul, I've done everything I need to do. If I don't save my soul, then it doesn't matter what I've done in the world or what happens, because it's just. So once you've got that basis formed in the people, they can then advance spiritually and otherwise. So he'd go around the diocese preaching these missions, and working extraordinary miracles of conversion, of grace, and word got around. And so he didn't have to promote them. It was just everybody wanted the missions, because they were just doing so much good around the diocese, and they could see souls, converting, turning to God, turning to the faith. And so that would be it. It'd go as it's a group of missionaries in that stage that didn't have any means of transport, and they wouldn't use horses, so they used to walk. And then you can imagine this kind of group of whatever 5-10 missionary monks walking into the city, and they'd have a big crucifix, and that would be planted in the town place, and then they go to the church and begin the mission and preach, and they just go around and spend their time preaching what we call the eternal truths and doing extraordinary good.
Even just got done reading a couple books on Garcia Moreno, and he called the Redemptorists in to preach all over Ecuador. And
Right, yeah.
What you were saying about what he did then, that's exactly how they described it then. Come in, put the cross down, everyone just flocked, converted the country.
And as I said before, you know, the thing about a mission is that it's the whole parish that is uplifted. It's not just a small group of people that are doing a retreat.
Mhm.
It's the whole parish, and you get that whole fervor going, and everybody sort of encourages everybody else. And it is a time of extraordinary grace. And particularly, it's the repairing of confessions. You know, it's hard to believe, but it actually is a reality where people would, you know, be going to confession and making bad confessions, or going to confession or going to communion and making bad communions because they've made a bad confession, and for years on end. And so the idea is that we came in as strangers. We didn't want to get to know the people. We don't want to get to know the people, but we're there to give them that opportunity to set themselves right with God, and then carry on. And we go and we just, you know, take those sins with us, as it were, the confession. So a mission does an extraordinary amount of good in a place.
Was his arthritis, was that from the missions, or was it from more of the writing?
I don't know if it was. I think it was just a congenital thing, you know, to do with, you know. I don't think it's specifically because of one thing or another. It was just, you know, bodily health. He died at 90, so, you know, he wasn't. He was a. And he worked, you know, right to the very last, you know, day of his life, basically. So I don't know that it was specifically, you know, that's not been said specifically because of the preaching of the missions. Or that, I mean, he wore himself out, that's for sure, and never wasted a moment of time.
Can you
But in spite of,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going, in spite of that, his sicknesses, he did so much. You know, there are pictures of him where he completely, you know, his chin was actually wearing into his chest and causing, you know, an infection, you know, an open wound that remained, you know, for the rest of his life, that type of thing. But in spite of that, he just carried on. Nothing stopped him.
Can you speak to his moral theology and how priests benefited from that and since then?
Right. So St. Alphonsus wrote the moral theology. It's in 6 volumes or 5 volumes, depending on which set you get. As I said in the beginning, you know, there were a whole lot of priests in around Naples and probably around Italy that weren't formed properly, and so they were just priests who would say mass. They would hear confessions. They wouldn't really know what they were doing, and so they were leading souls astray. So he wrote this moral theology in order to instruct primarily his own members of his own congregation, because there weren't many books around, and then for any, you know, priests throughout Italy, and then ultimately throughout the world. So it was actually a book written by a Jesuit, which he then, you know, corrected and put into good form and a more readable method,
Mm-hmm.
and has been used, you know, throughout the church. I think it's Pius XII who made him patron of moralists. So it is, his work is so good that he's the patron of the whole church of moral theology. It's being translated actually at the moment into English, which is the first time. I just know from the brothers in the seminaries. But this work, I suppose, as much as it was quite simple, written in Latin, he wanted to get it to the priests who wouldn't necessarily have time to read it, and so he wrote another book called Praxis Confessari, the practice of confessors, which was kind of a resume of the moral theology of just teaching them how to hear a good confession and lead people in the right way. But certainly, you know, his moral theology has formed, you know, the majority of priests, you could say, in the Catholic Church, because it was the standard book. So, you know, he's a patron of moralists and confessors. And I was just speaking to one of the brothers the other day, because we've always said that the St. Thomas, I think, was put on the altar at the Vatican Council in 1878, whatever it was. As being, you know, totally, you can follow it without any problem, you know. And St. Alphonsus, you know, understood, was put there in kind of the same light, that you can follow him even if you don't understand him. Apparently, it's not exactly like that. That is more is the point, that even if you don't understand what you read, you can follow his advice and carry on. And so there is that assurity in his writings that, you know, you almost can't go wrong, you know, which is wonderful.
Sign of a genius, making it tough easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why did he pick Our Lady of Perpetual Help as the icon?
Okay, so he didn't actually choose it. There's kind of an anachronism to do with Our Lady of Perpetual Help. He had a great love for Our Blessed Lady, and the image that he actually wrote before was Our Lady of Good Counsel from Scutari in Albania. And Our Lady of Good Counsel, he chose her because of the title Good Counsel, to write the right thing. Okay. The image of Our Lady of Perpetual Help comes into the scene after St. Alphonsus has died. It comes from, as I say, from Albania. It was brought across the Adriatic Sea to Italy, and there's a whole story about it. I won't go into too much, but basically ended up in a church between St. Mary Majors and John Lateran. Napoleon was wiping out church and things, so they could build big highways through Rome. And anyway, so this image got into a church but was hidden, and Our Lady wanted it to be exposed. And so under Pius IX, so that's the end of the 19th century, the picture was discovered by the Redemptorists, who built a church in the place where the image used to be hidden, the Church of St. Alphonsus. And so they applied to Pope Pius IX for permission to get this image back and promote it. And so Pius IX said to them, make her known. And I think, without exaggerating, could say that the image of our Mother Perpetual Help is the most well-known image in the whole world.
Yeah, I was going to say, they did a good job with that.
Yeah, they certainly did. So St. Alphonsus didn't actually know the image, but what was wonderful is that when they saw the image, it had the the two angels, St. Michael, St. Gabriel, holding up the spear and the sponge, and getting caught up now. You say, I should just have a quick look at
I could bring mine out.
the cross. Okay, and this was the emblem of the Redemptorist. That's it. Yeah. So the Redemptorist coat of arms has then the spear and the sponge, and the cross. And so it was a kind of clear sign from Our Lady that this was for the Redemptorists, and a blessing upon St. Alphonsus, who had promoted her so fantastically.
Oh, nice. Speaking of confraternities and Our Lady of Perpetual Help, what is the Confraternity of Our Lady of Perpetual Help? The significance behind it.
Right. Okay. It's like any St. Alphonsus always promoted confraternities and things like that. He said, look, when you get back to the faith, it's not sufficient just to go to confession and get right with God. You've got to nourish that faith. So you've got to have these confraternities, sodalities, all that type of thing, which are vehicles, means to keep you fervent and keep you loving our Lord, and help you to get salvation. So the Archconfraternities of Mother Perpetual's Help is exactly the same. It's a confraternity which people can join, which has certain prayers which need to be prayed each day. So you've got that obligation to nourish your faith, to keep on doing it. And yeah, it's just to promote devotion to Blessed Lady. She is the mother of perseverance. If we want to get to heaven, it's through the grace of perseverance. She's the mother of perseverance. It'll be through her. So it's just one of many different confraternities that there are, which help people to keep their faith, practice their faith, and make their way to heaven united with all those others who are in the Arch Confraternity. And like any Arch Confraternity, there's graces and blessings that go with it. The kind of things have been changed with indulgences, but big indulgences for belonging to the Arch Confraternity, and on certain days when you go to Mass. And then there's what we call the novena of Our Mother of Perpetual Help, it's a perpetual novena.
Mhm.
So a novena is normally 9 days of something, whereas it's called a novena, but it's actually once a week, and it's just devotions in honor of the Mother of Perpetual Help, promoted by the Redemptorists. Very big in the Philippines. They have it's on a Wednesday, and through the day they have these novena sessions, which begins with there's prayers to Mother Perpetual Help. There's a sermon always on it. There's an exposition of the Blessed Sacrament and a blessing. That's kind of in brief. And they have like 12,000 people going to this every single week. Okay, it's called Novena Day in the country. It's Novena Day. The cities in this Manila is an absolute mess. They have to change the way the streets work, because all the buses are going up to this church of the
Wow.
Kansas City, I think it's called. And so it's part of the whole devotion of the Arch Confraternity devotion of Blessed Mother. Then there's the same thing in Singapore. They have about 10,000 people going. I visited India. They've got another one in they're not as big, but just this, everybody getting together, praying, honoring Our Blessed Lady. And so when I talk about the 10,000, they have like 10 sessions of 1,000 people. So this is huge church they have, getting 10 about 1,000 people. And can you imagine 1,000 people coming and 1,000 leaving throughout the day? It's just an extraordinary expression of faith and honor of the Mother of God, and a really beautiful thing. Apparently, some Redemptorists who've when they've first gone there to preach, kind of almost faint at the sight of these thousands of people really, listening to what you've got to say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great devotion to the Mother of God.
Now you guys, I'll put the link in the show notes or description section of the Confraternity of Perpetual Help, but also the Purgatorian for my English speaking people,
Confraternity.
I quit.
Yeah, Arch Confraternity of the Purgatorian Arch Confraternity. So that began. There used to be an Arch Confraternity for the souls in purgatory. Basically, it's a mass or masses that are offered up every single day for anyone that is enrolled in the Arch Confraternity, and it's just offering up prayers every single day, having the mass offered up every single day. And there used to be several masses in the past. We were able to just do one a day. Sometimes we had two. When we've got more priests, we'll do that. And it's just a consolation and for people here to know that every single day the sacrifice of the mass is being offered up for those souls who are enrolled. And we haven't had to promote this Arch Confraternity in any way for years now, because I believe it's the souls in purgatory that are promoting it. It's amazing how many people want to be enrolled and do get enrolled, and we're not promoting it. Okay, we're talking about it now, fine. But the reality is there's no big promotion going on, because I believe it's doing so much good that the Holy Souls themselves are kind of promoting it and inspiring people to get families enrolled in that type of thing. So that is, it's you can enroll yourself as an individual, you can enroll a whole family, which includes 3 generations, grandparents, grandchildren. And it's just having the mass prayed for them every single day at Father Magla in Papa Stranda. He's offering the mass each day. And you can begin by joining even when you're alive. So it begins, it's for the living as well as the dead. So if you join as a living member, as soon as you die, there's a special mass offered up, and then the masses continue for you after you've died. So you don't have to wait in any way until you're dead or whatever.
That definitely works.
Yeah. So it's just that's what it is, and it was always blessed by the church, and being able to carry that on.
Very good. The Bonnie Prince. what's the story behind that?
The Bonnie Prince is Father Michael Mary's brainchild, you could say. So we're living in Scotland. We began in Scotland. We're up in the Northern Isles, and we're just wanting to have a specific image that would portray the specificity of our location there in Scotland. And so Father came up with the idea of an image of the infant Jesus in Scottish clothing. You know, you often see images in like Chinese clothing or this, where our Lord has appeared, Our Lady. And so that was the idea, was just to promote him under a special title in Scotland. And so we came across an artist actually in America, I think North Carolina. No, I forget which state, no, Georgia maybe, who did the painting for us. And so Father wanted the Highlands, so the scene of the mountains actually is absolutely real. It's in one of the Highlands there. He's sitting on the Scone Stone, which was the stone on which all the kings of Great Britain were crowned, and Scotland as well. So there's a lot of significance in this. He's wearing the great tartan. He's wearing the tartan of the Bonnie Prince. In Scottish history is Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was the last Catholic king. And so we thought, well, our Lord is the Bonnie Prince. You know, he's the most extraordinary prince that there is. And so, we took the title for him and named him the Bonnie Prince.
Okay.
I think it's been kind of more clearly stated. We use that shorter title, but he's the Prince of the Highlands and Islands, because we got permission from the Bishop of Aberdeen to promote the image. So it's just to give people a sense of Scotland and a love of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Okay. Will there be a New Zealand one coming?
Probably not, actually.
So you guys also give the relics of St. Gerard in a little band type deal thing?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So St. Gerard, or Gerard, sorry, I speak kind of the colonial English, but anyway, I'll try and use St. Gerard. So he was a Redemptorist lay brother. How does a Redemptorist lay brother become the patron of mothers? You'd have thought, well, surely some mother would be the patron of mothers, but he's not. So this lay brother, St. Gerard, who knew St. Alphonsus, lived at the same time as him, became the patron of mothers. And it happened, he's called a wonder worker of the 18th century. He just worked so many miracles, just extraordinary. His life is just totally and utterly full of miracles. A couple examples, just like there was this huge ship going floundering in the sea of the Bay of Naples, a huge storm. So he walks out on the water, takes a hold of the anchor and pulls the boat in. I mean, this is just extraordinary miracles. He worked so many miracles. In the end, his superior looked, stop working. I give you obedience to stop working miracles. Okay, so there's this. He's at this work site, and someone's falling off a roof. So he says, "Stop! I'm going to go get permission to work a miracle." And so this chap's kind of hanging in the air there, while Saint Gerard goes and gets permission and says, "Can I work this miracle?" Or the chap's going to fall down and die. And says, "Yeah, okay, you can." Anyway, so Saint Gerard was visiting a sick young woman. I don't know how old she was, in the like 16, 17, and they knew that he was able to work miracles and heal her, and so he went there and he cured her from the sickness that she was in. And as he was leaving, a handkerchief dropped from his pocket or wherever he was carrying it, and he walked out, and then a person of the house ran after and said, Gerard, you've left your handkerchief, or your handkerchief's fallen out. So he says, keep it, it'll be useful for you one day. And so this girl that he cures is now married and pregnant and having a baby, and she's going through this terrible pregnancy, like just gonna die. And then she remembers the handkerchief of Saint Gerard. So she asks for it, and she puts it on her, and immediately the pregnancy just goes perfectly. The baby's born, no problem, whatever. So there's now this, wow, he's worked this wonderful miracle. So they divide the handkerchief up into parts, and they're just spreading around to all mothers who are pregnant, having difficult pregnancy, that type of thing. And it just carried on from there. So then any relic that was of Saint Gerard was then given to women who were either wanting to become pregnant or having difficult child pregnancies, births. So we began promoting this devotion. So basically, we take a linen cloth, which we touch the relic of Saint Gerard all over it, and then divide the cloth, and so it becomes a third-class relic because it's touched to the first-class relic of his bone, and send it out. And extraordinary graces have been won over the years. So many families who haven't been able to conceive have applied for the relic, and within a month or two, suddenly the person's pregnant, and then they have a big family. Pregnancies that have been difficult, they've had the relic with them, pregnancy's gone fine. One example, they were actually doing a scan of the child. There was something wrong, and as they put the relic to the lady's stomach, you could actually see this thing working underneath the scan, correcting itself almost. And the doctors are absolutely amazed at this kind of visible miracle. So, extraordinary graces, and they just continue to happen to do with mothers who are pregnant, that whole thing. So that's how it was. Yeah.
If you guys get the newspaper, it's in the back. A lot of the stories of this, they post them in there. They publish them, I mean.
Yeah. No, it's great. He's a great saint, and continues to be the patron of mothers.
Very good. So, Father, any other concluding thoughts you could think of for Alphonsus, Saint Gerard, or Redemptorists in general for right now?
Well, I think just the most important thing, which will always be something I'll come back to, is the words of our Lord. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and suffer the loss of a soul? What exchange can a man give for a soul? So it's the last words that St. Alphonsus had on his deathbed. So he was dying, 90 years old, and his one of great nephew came along and said, one last word, what's one last word you can give me before and I leave you? And he just said, save your soul, So that's all that matters. So we're in a fight, we're in a battle. It doesn't matter what's going on around us as long as we are doing what we can to save our souls. And so that's the work of St. Alphonsus. All he cared about was for someone to get to heaven, save their soul. And Our Lady is the mother of salvation, the perseverance, and she wants the salvation of us all. So all of these things are just there as means to get us to heaven, and there to use. So yeah, that's really understand the importance of your soul, and what a terrible, terrible thing it would be to lose your soul for all eternity. It's a thing we actually can't grasp, because we're living in time and we're not God. We can't understand this thing of eternity. To be lost forever is just the most frightening, horrific thing. And St. Alphonsus, his most favorite Jacques prayer was, "Oh my God, do not send me to hell. Oh my God, do not send me to hell. Oh my God, do not send me to hell." So that's all that matters. And I'll come back to it again and again. And St. Alphonsus says that people in the world promote their lousy literature and their junk again and again and again to flood the mind with their rubbish. And so he says, well, I'm going to flood your mind with good things, good writing, good words. And so that's what it is. You're going to hear the same thing again, but it's all that matters. Yeah.
Yes. Something we need to hear. We need it a couple of times, slap us across the face every so often. And one of his was a preparation for death. I think he wrote Ecclesiastes, was it 7:40 all the time? Know thy end, and you'll never sin. Yeah. I got it framed up on the wall.
Absolutely, yeah. think of your last end and you'll never sin. Yeah. So it's just trying to put those eternal truths, that's what we call eternal truths, before us, have them deeply in our minds and our hearts, that they come back to us, so that when the trial comes, the temptation comes, whatever, we say, well, no, that doesn't matter. I've got to save my soul, and it's a help along the way. So yeah, it's
All right. Well, again, please help support these guys. They're still building down in New Zealand. They're still trying to come into the United States. They have a 501c for anybody in the United States. I'll put the info in the show notes section below if you want to help support that way, along with their calendar, which I know he's on right now, and it'd be like, hey, this is the greatest calendar out there. It is pretty much the best calendar out there. And obviously the newspaper. A lot of people on Instagram and Twitter have been saying they subscribed. Thanks, awesome, great.
yeah.
Tell your friends. I'm going to try to get some more, because I got a couple conferences come up, and I'll just pass them out, see if I can get some more. But yeah, just keep these guys in your prayers, and support them any chance you got. Father, as always, thanks. Yeah, next time we do this, we'll do Glories of Mary.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thanks very much for having me, Steve, and thanks for the good work that you're doing. And God bless you, Glass. God bless everybody who's able to listen and help us. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Final blessing, Father?
Certainly. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et manet semper. Amen.